So everyone thought that I was here to ban alcohol. Yeah, like as if I had that power to ban alcohol completely. But so I had to. I wanted them to come to me and then share their stories, but that did not happen initially.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Current Art Podcast. I'm Yaching. And today we are connecting with a filmmaker in New York, Sikuma Rai. Sikuma, could you please introduce yourself a little bit and also give us a small description about your film and the name of your film as well?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sikuma. I am a Nepali living in New York for the past 2 years. I'm a classmate of Yaching, and I'm a documentary filmmaker trying to also step in narrative filmmaking. Yeah, my film is a short film which I made before coming to New York. Is Come Over for a Drink Kanchhi. It is about 6 women from my village in eastern Nepal who are addicted to alcohol. It's about finding the reason why behind their consumption of alcohol and trying to break the stereotype or the popular narrative that people have against our community. Yeah, it's a short film. If you're interested, you can hit me up and then I'll send you a link.
As each time I watch, I felt something very different. So at the very beginning, when I watched this film, I can only feel the character like collectively. So I see them as one person or one identity. But as I watched like few more times, I started to get to know auntie. I started to get to know those characters like grandma and sister. And it's getting more and more painful. It feels like I'm learning their own personal histories of their personal struggles, not only with alcoholism. I don't think alcoholism is something that is their burden. It is not their burden. It's their savior. They were being saved by the alcohol. Uh, the real life struggle is real, and then there's no way to find a solution.
Yeah, I think you put it in a very um, great way. I mean, eloquent way. I couldn't have expressed it myself, even though it's my film. But yeah, I that's what I saw. That alcohol was not a burden, but rather, like you said, it was a savior. And and also, I don't know. I think you read it in the articles as well, right? That it in Nepal there was a long ruling popular narrative that our culture, the indigenous community that I come from, it is called Rai, and we use a lot of alcohols in our daily rituals. We even children, they drink alcohol when they're just so little. So it's like very normal for us to have alcohol around us in everyday rituals. So so we've been hearing that alcohol, because we use alcohol so much, because we consume alcohol so much, we are backward, we are not progressing culturally, as a community, as a person, and we're always in inferior level compared to the other communities, other groups, ethnic groups, or other Nepali communities that do not use or consume alcohol. So that was the very dominant narrative in Nepal, and I also grew up hearing to that a lot, and especially from my father, because he was, even though he used to consume alcohol a lot during his younger days, he became like he started pushing himself away from alcohol and meat. So he became kind of like an advocate against consumption of alcohol, and he used to raise me saying that this is not good, we should stop doing this, our community needs to progress and stuff like that. And he has seen his community in the same village that I shot. He has seen everyone going into ruins because he thinks it was because of alcohol. So so I grew up in that notion, in that thought. And when I actually went there without my family, because before that I was always accompanied by some of my family members, and I would not engage or converse with my village people as much as I did in the film. So that was the only time that I went alone and then just let myself be in the community all by myself through my own approach. And that's what I saw, that alcohol was saving them. And it was rather the, wholesome state of the country and its people that were pushing them towards that direction. Just for the shoot, I spent 2.5 week.
Yeah.
But since this is where my parents, my father grew up, and my mother married to this place, in this place. So we, ever since I was born, we had been visiting this place every year or every once 2 years or something like that. So I've kind of grown up some part of my life in this village. It is called Sikteltar in Bhojpur district, that is in the east of Nepal.
So, for the 2 weeks that you spent there, can you paint me a picture? Like, what is the most memorable scene in your mind when you think about this village, when you think about Sikteltar?
I think it's the fresh air and the cool breeze, but the sun is warm in its own way, and there's a lot of greens, and it's just so pleasing to see everywhere. The food is really good because every raw food tastes so much better there. It's what one of the best thing is the water. There's a small stream in both sides of the village, so you'll hear the sound of the stream, very fresh and crisp, every time, and the water tastes so much better. The smell of the forest and the cardamom plants. But what I don't like is the leeches.
Yeah.
I really hate leeches, and there's a lot in that place when it's monsoon.
Can you smell the smell of alcohol? Can you smell the smell of wine, for example?
Yeah, I can smell it. Yeah, if it's in the morning, then if you before when my grandfather was alive, he used to take a walk every morning around the village, looking what's happening and everything. And sometimes I used to accompany him. I miss that now that he's passed away. But if you're taking a walk every morning, then you'll definitely smell mm, the good alcohol, and there will always be the smell of the wine, the freshly made wine. If you go inside the kitchen, and then definitely the smell of the pigs and the children playing along.
It's interesting you said that you're going there alone to start this journey, because what I have noticed is you have a very soft, comforting voice. So you give them so much power, and maybe power is a wrong word. You give them so much freedom to tell their
Please?
stories.
Yeah.
So they feel very safe with you. You create such a safe space for those women. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think that has been my innate quality, to not speak much and just listen and see and hear what's going on. That's my nature. I don't speak upfront, and I have to find a lot of courage and confidence to be outspoken as well. So it's in my nature to just listen to them and see what's going on and hear their point of view. And I have been like that for most of my younger days as well. These days I talk, but I grew up being that kind of person. So it was natural for me to just give them space and use my skills to, um, you know, yeah, giving them space is what I call.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's very effective because what I have experienced watching this film is like they call you sisters, and then they tell really their vulnerable side of their stories. It's like the most traumatic stories that you wouldn't want other people to know, especially if it's a stranger, if it's
Yeah.
a filmmaker. I don't know how they perceive filmmaker. It must also be a very new concept for them, right?
Yeah, it totally is. I don't think they have ever seen a camera before this. Maybe like phone cameras and a little bit of picture here and there. But when I was shooting the wedding scene, everyone was so. Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. What happened is, in a wedding scene, it is very normal for people to come and fight and then argue and then create a scene. And so people heard that I'm coming with a camera and recording everything, so they were on their best behavior and did not argue at all. No one argued. And I initially thought that was normal, like no one argues, people have grown up and then they're forward thinking. But then someone told me it was because of my camera and I was shooting them that they were on their best behavior. So that was really interesting to know. It took me some time to have them open up to me. As I said, my father is a big advocate in our village. So he is like, everyone, don't do this, like very strict about it, like very direct about it, rather than, being subtle and everything. So everyone thought that I was here to ban alcohol. Yeah, like as if I had that power to ban alcohol completely. But so I had to, I wanted them to come to me and then share their stories, but that did not happen initially. So the person that I was staying with, who is also in the film as like kind of like a main character, Amrit Kumari, do you recognize her? She kind of comes in a lot of places from the beginning till the end. So I did not officially made her my main character, but she comes off as a main character in this film. So it was her idea to invite everyone who's interested to come to a group meeting, and then I share my point of view, and then if they feel safe and or interested, they can share their own stories. So we had that focus group kind of setting. And I began saying that, yeah, even though my father is like this, I'm not here to ban alcohol, but I am here to listen to your stories, listen to what you have to say. And let's just share if you're okay with it. And I'll just listen and record it quietly without any judgments. So that was the day when everyone started sharing their stories most of the time. After that discussion, I realized that initially I had men speak as well. Most of the people think that I was only filming women, but actually I had men as well and women all together. But I started seeing a distinction that men's reasons were very different from women's reasons, and men's reasons were always very political and religious. Like they had a devotion towards their religion, and their ancestors, that they had to do it, otherwise it would be very not in their quality culturally to go against it or something like that. And politically, because our community are kind of politically behind, so we need to push it by pushing our cultures together, things like that. So because of that, the men had their own reason that they should drink. But women, on the other hand, they did not talk about these things at all. They were saying like, "Oh, I have so much pain. I am so much in debt," and stuff like this. That I started focusing more on them. Their reasons became more relevant to myself as well, and I could feel their pain. I could feel their reasons. So I was more attracted to them, and I thought that political and religious reasons are something we've been hearing a lot, but you know, this is the right way, I think. So that's why I started filming them more.
That's a really smart decision. So let me point out that the group session, like group sharing session that you were talking about, actually showing up in the very end of the film, which is
Yeah.
really touching.
Yeah.
Like it's more like a self-confession. Like people were talking about the real reasons why they consume alcohol and the effect inside of them. Are you saying this is actually in the very beginning of your shooting that you actually bring them together? So there's a change of the timeline for the filmmaker. This is a very creative decision. And I was also very interested what you were saying about, like, you were initially shooting the man, right? Shooting the man too. It's very interesting because when I watch this film, I almost have the feeling like the man doesn't exist. Like they have been erased from the village, and the women's story has been enlarged and in such a beautiful and powerful way.
What you said about men not being in the village, it's kind of true for most of the Nepali villages. um, Young men who are able, they mostly migrate into Middle East to do manual labor and then send remittance to Nepal to their family. And even these days, young women as well who are capable, they fly abroad. Or if it is educated young people, they'll fly to Western countries, developed countries. So there is like a low population who can really work, and then bring modernization in such areas like agriculture.
And I think it's really interesting when you said, like, the men's, they are drinking because of like political reason. The village that you are shooting is actually from Kirati people, a million Kirati people in Nepal, and Rai community is one of the tribe from Kirati people, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Then my question arises, like, is like, are those men, they are representing Rai community and want to gain political power through like amplifying their traditional culture?
Yeah, kind of like that. I'm not sure if they're actively trying to gain political power, but subtly, they want to um, uplift their culture by showing devotions, and then with that cultural identity, they want to kind of put a political force. Many years ago, like centuries ago, Kirati people used to rule over Nepal. When Nepal was not even named as Nepal, it was a different kingdom then. And then the next dynasty ruled over and then moved Kirati people towards the east of the country. And that's before Darjeeling, Sikkim, and other parts were also part of Nepal. So Rai people used to live in that area too. But after a war with India, when it was occupied by British East India Company, Nepal had to give up Darjeeling and Sikkim, and then that's why many Rai people also live there. My husband's ancestors are also from Darjeeling, India, Northeast India, but mostly, traditionally, historically, Rai or Kirati people are from the east specifically. But nowadays there are Rais all over the country, I think. But mostly still now, they are located still in the east.
Mm.
And there's a huge movement going on to push Kirati identity in the East right now in political level. And when this film was released, many people also used this film as kind of like an advocate to push this agenda. But I have not followed it that much.
Like in the beginning of the film, like the women said, we came out of the womb bathing in alcohol.
Yeah.
That's a very strong but also very poetic phrase. Do you agreeing with this? What she is saying? Like, is this the culture that you are growing up with?
Yeah. But I did not grow up like that. I think our generations kind of stopped growing up like that, or generations from now on will stop growing up like that. But historically, our community is not as privileged, and there's a lot of hard work in the hills, farm works, and working under the sun, going to the forest. So when things like that, you have to do things like that every day. There is not much time for children to be raised in a proper way, right? So they'll just do whatever means they have, right? So sometimes when children um, can't sleep, or when situations occur, mothers, they just let the children drink a little bit of alcohol and then they fall asleep. Or it's just in their culture to let the children have a little bit of fun as well, things like that. So it's not taken as seriously as here. But it's not I'm not saying that it's a big deal, uh, or it is done heavily, like making children drink alcohol heavily is not the culture. But she's just saying that alcohol is always there.
It's like in a reachable distance.
Yeah, because if we get married, then we'll have to use alcohol. If we if there's death, then we'll have to use the alcohol in the rituals. And yeah, in parties, everything, there's always alcohol. And if it's a very good alcohol, then sometimes it really helps you soothe stomach pain. And before, they also, after like a heavy day of work, every evening after dinner, they would have a cup of alcohol, and they just help relax. I think many people also do that in present times. But yeah, it was in a moderate amount. So that's the tales I had been hearing from my parents as well. Yeah.
It's really interesting because what you said about like people are doing really hard working in those villages, and I see that because there's no machine works when they have to like working in the field. When I saw like the women are growing cardamom in the field, and then they don't have like any like modern machine to help them. Like they don't have the car, they still use the ox. Like all the tools they have been using and all the labors they have been doing, that is actually very, very organic. It's like really reminds me of back to the days. So they don't have any help of technology to do the farming.
And also that people are very poor, and then one individual cannot afford like a heavy supply machines, huge machines. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's in a very sad state. That's why our economy, before, agriculture used to produce the highest economy, but now it's like degrading. But still, there's so much areas just for agriculture as well. So yeah, the state of the country is not good at all.
So those Rai women, they have been working like in the agriculture every single day, like really heavy works, and then after their works, they're allowed to have a drink, or they really like serve themselves like a prize to themselves to have a drink.
Yeah.
For me, it's totally justified, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Even after work, like not just as after work, indulgence, but also mm, because they're so tired that they cannot cook for themselves, that they feel so tired and lazy to cook for themselves after a heavy work, they replace food with rice wine. Rice wine is like the milky drink.
Yeah.
There must be something in Chinese as well. So rice wine, like Korean makgeolli, they drink that and then they kind of fill their tummies with that instead of good quality nutritious food. So that's also the reason why they're so addicted to alcohol.
Yeah, of course. If I zoom out a little bit, if I zoom out, so I don't focusing on the each person's struggle, I've seen this village is really, really amazing and really beautiful in its landscape because of without factories, without pollutions. So it has a very amazing texture to it, and you successfully capture those textures by showing like the mountains, the fog, and this greeneries everywhere, and also like those old tools they have been using, right? And it's truly, truly impressive. But I also think about, is that possible that they don't have so much of medical support? And is it possible like it is very difficult to get the proper education for their kids?
Yeah. I'll give you to provide a sense. I'll provide a sense of how far the location is, how far the village is from main cities. Like from Kathmandu, where I live, I have to take a flight to the nearest airport, which takes like 2 to 3 hours, 2 3 hours, and then from there, I have to hike. Before I used to hike 2 days to reach that village, but now there's buses, so I can take bus from the airport to bus, or like a simple van or a motorbike to reach there, and I can reach there in a one whole day trip. So it is quite far. The road for like a vehicle transportation only came to the village a few years ago. I think around COVID, it reached the place only around COVID. So before that, people had to walk all the way, like 1 2 for a fast walker, like 2 hours or 1 hour maximum. But for us, it would take like half day to reach to the main city. And main city is not like a city; it's a town in a hill. So yeah, it would take half a day to reach to the main town. So that's how far it is. So yeah, I'd really say that there's no proper healthcare system. There's only one doctor, government, public service doctor, something like that, and there's not much medicine and everything. People hardly go to doctors as well, and there is one school on top of the village. Um, I don't know if it doesn't have a high school. I think maybe until 10 or something. So it is everything is reaching only recently. It does not have great infrastructures, that's for sure.
So they don't have like very basic infrastructures which support them to have a modern lifestyle. This is very, very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because there's one woman in your film, it's the auntie. She talks about the depression.
Oh yeah, she's the main
Because
character.
depression is a very modern term, right? And then she said, I want to push them away. No, please don't come near me. I saw them as monsters. I'd get terrified. Apparently, they call it depression.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
she is fully aware of like her relationship with the community or the people around her, and she is being able to name this term as depression. Really, some level of self awareness that I think people should pay respect to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Before I made this documentary, when I was still like maybe teenage, when I was not aware of what's going on in with my villagers or what's going around me, that's when I have fragments of memory when she used to come to visit us in Kathmandu, and my mothers would say that she's a bit sick. So I did not understand back then, but when I met her for this film, yeah, she revealed this herself, and that's when I joined the dots together. And but yeah, she had been taking medications for a long time, and she had been visiting the main city just for her health check and everything. So yeah, she is, it just happened that way. I did not initially chose to make her the main character or even chose to stay with her, but it just happened that way. My father arranged my stay at her place, and that's how I got to be close to her. But as I spent every day, every day after dinner, we would sit near the firewood, where we cook as well, and we would start talking about our personal lives, and she would reveal these things that would just influenced me or inspire me so much and motivate me. Like, she was like a whole package of inspiration, and a very strong woman. She was handling everything on her own. When her husband, when no one would be there for her, she was living all alone. Her husband was, she had not seen her husband for many years because he was abroad, trying to earn the living. And then her kids would also not, grow up like she wanted to, or pay the respect that she would want her children to do. So they were just being, I don't know, children, I think. And these children are not like small children, they're like very grown up adults. So they would not understand her situation. They would just argue with her about money and stuff like that. So in that case, I saw her in a very, strong light. She had she was trying to take control of her own life and fate. So that's why I kind of feel like, when I was there, when we were filming, she was politically active as well. I think she was in a member of uh, that village council or something, but now she has resigned. Though she has resigned now, but back then she was really active and trying to, do something challenging, maybe to take her mind off as well. But yeah, she was doing a really good job back then.
Because I think what the filmmakers tend to do is they don't see those subjects as eye level. They put so much sympathy over them, like raining over sympathy. So we saw like a poor little creature, like poor little subject. But the
Yeah.
way you describe it, the way that it's shown in the film, it is a woman that with like self-consciousness living in a very challenging situation. Because what I've seen those women going through, like literally they have to suffer from the loss of the relatives, the loss of their children because of like the not very complete medical system. They have to pay debt. They have to afford very difficult, very high price of education, and their work they have been doing is like labor demanding, like very physical demanding, and they don't earn so much money.
Yeah.
And then they don't have like the modern support, what I say modern support is something like a therapist to help you through, you know,
Yeah.
or have a mentor. I don't know if they
Mhm.
have a mentor or not. Maybe they are themselves mentor, but they are lacking support, and they're the generations, as you said, always being judged upon, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like all those burdens, all those traumas, and they have to carry themselves by themselves. And I think what the most powerful things for filmmakers and for like audiences is like understand, you want to understand them, you have to understand them through their pains.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, in Nepal, what happens is a lot of filmmakers come to Nepal because it is famous for, Everest, or um, a lot of trekkers, or Sherpa communities. So there is a rise of awareness that Nepalese feel that Nepal is more than that. So there are a lot of filmmakers coming to break that stereotype, or to break that identity Nepalese have in the global arena. Like it is more than its mountains, right? So, and whenever any foreigner, whether tourist or filmmakers would come, they would always give that pity look. And if you're conscious enough, you realize that where that sympathy, pity comes from. So I've
Mm,
always tried not to see anyone. If I make a film, I always, it was always in the back of my mind to not give that pity look, to not think of yourself as very superior than the rest. So I've tried to not have that point of view, and I'm glad that it did not come through like that as well in the film. And I think I'll always try to maintain that balance as well. So I'm glad that you also felt that way.
yeah, of course. And I understand what you're talking about
Mhm.
foreign filmmakers coming to Nepal, trying to portray like
Yeah.
what's in their mind backwardness. You know, as women, it's interesting because sometimes you're thinking myself is more closely to be in this fucked up situation rather than to be a celebrity, you know.
Mhm.
If your life is really out of control, that you can be in a very bad situation, and if you don't hold yourself up, it could go that bad. So that means I have to kind of stand on the same boat with them rather than when I look up to the celebrities. Because
Mhm.
my distance to the celebrities are much, much, much larger than my distance to those people who's
Mhm.
in the village. Seriously.
Yeah.
Even though I am in an okay state, we know like you have auntie, grandma, and sister. Like the stories are through those main characters and develop.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It seems like we're also living in quite like a community situation because, you
Yeah.
know, they're drinking partners. They come
Yeah.
together and dance and then put the colors on their face
Mhm.
afterwards. And they
Yeah.
take care of each other and then they make wine themselves.
Yeah. So in Nepal, how a community, a village is formed is there's, it's covered with hills, most of the space. So there's hills, and then there's a few houses in one place, and that's a village. And there's a house in another spot, and that's a village. So our village is in a um, flat, comparatively flatter surface than most of the hills. So the name is also the end of the name, Sikteltar. Tar is also, tar means like a flat space in Nepali.
Mm.
So yeah, so it's easier for people to come and go to each other's home, and there's that sense of community, and in that community we refer each other as yeah, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, grandmom, things like that, or sister-in-law. So everyone is very close.
Like those villages, they're defined by the geography, right? They're the flat space next to the hill, and they're kind of isolated, if I can understand it correctly, right? And it takes a lot of effort to go to another village. And I guess because of those like geographical condition, like the communities, it feels more close to each other and more bonded with each other, right?
Yeah. And maybe because of that as well, there's a lot of dispute among themselves as well, not just all happy all the time.
Yeah.
But despite that, I think the intentions are always good for each other.
And it's also very interesting in your film, there's also a lot of like close up, like for example, close up of a like very deep eye after like drinking, I don't know how many wine, how many bottles of wine. Yeah.
Actually that's one thing that I realized only after coming back after the shoot. Since this was my first documentary, first film, which I also shot it myself and did everything myself. I was not very skilled, I would say. So I used everything I could out of my skill to make this film. And at the time I only had 50 millimeter lens. But what I realized is I really love to go near people, like get to know their personal stories. And I think that's reflected in the lens that I chose, which was unintentional.
Even though those films are on their face, but it doesn't feel intrusive at all. It feels like a very close observations, like close communications of the eyes of the lens and the eyes of those women that are so touching, actually, I think. But I also realize there's a very special way of telling the story through the songs from the community.
Yeah. Actually, this folk song is my next project coming up. And I'm going to shoot it starting from October this year. But yeah, folk songs have been an integral part of our community, Rai community, and most of the other indigenous communities in Nepal. So, but it's really fading, and these days there aren't many people who would remember those songs or remember how it used to be a part of our heritage. So I'm trying to trace down that part of the history, trying to by following a musician who himself researches and produces folk songs. But yeah, like you said, folk songs represented their daily lives, what happened in their day, what they did, and how they spent their lives, or what was in their mind during that time of the year or something like that. So folk songs were our community, we don't document like written things historically. So it's mostly through oral storytelling and everything. So folk songs is one of that type. And since it was not documented, a lot of folk songs have disappeared. But yeah, these songs are about farming, about meeting a new guy, about finding love sometimes, about just life, hardships of life. So yeah, I find it really interesting as well. Did I talk about you about this? Like sometimes after I came to New York, there are times when I just have a flashback, like one frame flashback of the hills, the trees, sometimes just the skies or the smell. I have a flashback and then it just goes out, and then all of a sudden I feel so nostalgic that I want to transport myself to that place right now, right that moment. It's that flashback, that memory is so strong, that is Yeah, zip zap zip.
It's so interesting what you're saying about this nostalgic feelings, because
Mm,
you don't know why we get so nostalgic about certain things. Is
mm.
it very hard to know what actually touches you?
Yeah. I thought if I get nostalgic feelings, then it would be of maybe Kathmandu, because that's where I grew up most of my life. And that's my birthplace, that's my workplace, everything. But I rarely get that flashback from Kathmandu, but rather I get it from outside of Kathmandu, like village, or these areas,
Mm.
where nature is more closer.
It's interesting that we are very attached to certain things that we have no idea what is the reason.
Yeah.
And even though we are so away from it, like in New York, in other places of the world, it seems like as long as we allow the mind and body to go back, they can still perceive it very precisely about certain
Yeah.
places and people, even. I wonder, like, under your portraits of those women,
Mhm.
I wonder if they also have a nostalgic places that they felt so close to that their heart felt differently without the effect of alcohol. Like the places we can go back to without the stimulations.
Mhm. Yeah, I wonder about that.
Because
Hmm.
this film has a lot to do with how to deal with pain itself.
Hmm.
I think when I was younger, I always thought, well, if I'm a grown up one day, I will be able to deal with all the struggles and will be a like emotionally like complete person that I will not have so much pain. I will not have so
Hmm.
much trouble anymore. And I find it's wrong. It's another way around. So
Hmm.
I wonder what is your takeaway about dealing with pain after you shot this film, like your
Hmm.
personal takeaway, like what emotional effect it has on you, like not artistically but like actually personally, like
Mm.
as a human being, have you learned anything from them?
Yeah, alcohol heals everything. No,
Oh.
actually, I didn't used to. Like I said, my father was a big advocate, so I kind of grew up naturally not having to drink alcohol that much. But and my social circle was not like that to enforce alcohol in me. But after this film, I kind of started drinking alcohol, and now I drink a lot. Like, maybe not that much, but I did not foresee myself drinking this much when I was younger.
Mm.
And now I used to think that beer tasted bad, but now there's nothing more sweeter than beer when you're in pain.
That's a
And
great takeaway. As a filmmaker, I totally
yeah,
support it. Yeah.
yeah. And my mother also used to make rice wine at home, and then fry some potatoes in a very Nepali way. It had that potato had that very distinct flavor of fresh chilies, fresh chives, and kind of not fully cooked potatoes, and it went so well with the wine. And she used to drink this every most of the summers when she did some farm work. We have a small space to do farming, like grow vegetables and everything for my mother. So she works there, and during summer she used to make this for herself and for her friends, and used to eat, and sometimes call me over to have some drink and potatoes. So after coming to New York, I crave that a lot. There are times when I just want to have that wine and then put that potato and then chill and relax and have a good time. But I have not been able to do that
Yeah.
yet. So this
Yeah.
time, maybe when I go back to Nepal, I'll do that. I really wanted to try making rice wine, but yeah, I don't have that much time right now.
All I'm thinking about is also the time,
Mm.
because making wine takes time. And
Yeah.
to be able to enjoy it takes time.
It also requires space for it to store, and then it will be very smelly. It will have a very pungent smell, and you don't want that for your roommates and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fermented, and then
Yeah.
the whole process is another experience. And
Yeah.
but I guess we need space and time, and then we need to be fermented. I think so, because our pain has to be fermented.
Ooh. Did you come up with that just now?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, we did time and space and to ferment. That's a good line.
I
Mhm.
think this is a great talk, and I think we should end it here. Thank you so much. And I'm available on YouTube Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Podcasts. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I will see you next week. Ciao, ciao.
Bye. Thank you, Yaching. So, after finishing the filming of this film, the same woman who you described, who had depression, she sent me 2 bottles of the alcohol she made in the film. During the end of the film, she makes a few bottles. So she gave me 2 bottles to take home in Kathmandu. But what happened is, in airports, they do checkups. They check the bags, and what they don't allow like homemade liquor. It's only the packaged one. And they found my bag, even though it was like wrapped in newspaper and tightened it with tapes and everything. They asked one policeman. He asked me to open it, and he was so confident and he was glowing, thinking, "Okay, I will confiscate this and then have it for myself." So he was glowing, and I saw him glowing. So I was like, no, I have to take this home. And he questioned me, what is this? Is this liquor? Yes. Is this homemade? Yes. Then you can't take home. Either give it to someone here inside the airport, or you have to throw it away. And I said, I have someone who came with me, but he's outside the airport. Can I go out and then call him? And he said, no, you can't do that. It must be someone inside the airport. And he asked me to throw it away. And I was so worried because it was like a handmade gift for my mother, and I was so frustrated. And what I did was I opened the bottle, and then there was a huge trash can, and then I threw it all out. And at that time, the policeman's face, it was so black, it was so dark. He had hoped to drink it, that night and have some good times. But then he instead he had to see it, thrown away. So I was like, either I get it or no one gets it at all.
I love it. It's such a great story. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you would drink it.
I yeah, I wanted to do that actually. I would drink in front of him, but at that time I still was not consuming alcohol as much, and it was a lot, and I was afraid that if I drink they won't let me fly.
Yeah, it's a great story. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one moment that I will never forget.
Yeah. We have to keep what is ours, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned so much this summer. Personally,
Yeah.
it's personally sharing. This is not podcast. I realized something about female. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting that I think as a female growing up, even though I was born in like a quite open-minded family, and then we have this one-child policy. I think the way that I've been raised is still very passive. Like women, supposed to not having desires, supposed to not having your own will, but accept what other people give to you. And if you are not happy with it, you just leave. But I think what I also inspire from your story is you're taking another action. Like you're saying, okay, you are going to ask me to throw this liquor away, and I mean, it seems like there's only two options. Like there's two options I cannot like decide anyway, but I'm going to find my own way. I'm going to do a third way that you will never expected. I think what I have been educated is to take other people's options. They give me option to choose one of them, and I think this is so. For such a long time I always thought this is the only way of living, and I came to a realization, enlightenment, that I realized it. No, if what what if I have something that I wanted desperately, I'm going to admit I wanted desperately, and I'm going to, you know, you try to fight for it. You try to like really learn how to um, build the boundaries for yourself. This is something maybe for other people this is something extremely normal. They do it every single day. But for me, it's a groundbreaking thing.
No, I also find like some people are just born that way, that they can challenge other people to find their own path or to let their voice speak. But it was a lot of challenge for me, and it still is a lot of challenge for me to be that person, to say there's instances like unnecessary instances like the one that I have with police, where I find the courage, where somehow I'm the badass kind of person. But it's not always like that I fight for my opinion or my desires as well. Or maybe within the family I'm like that, but not outside.
Yeah, and I realized it. The only way to get what you wanted in this life, or in art world, in like personal relationships, friends and whatever other relationships, is actually to, you can say fight, but also to stand for stand for what you're advocating for. Like to declare this is what I wanted,